Welcome back. Each month, I'd like to take you along with me to see what's growing in my garden and what I'm able to harvest. In these monthly harvest videos, I'll showcase what I picked throughout the month, share a few tips and observations about the plants I'm growing, and talk about what's working and sometimes what isn't. So it's also a great way for me to document what's growing in my garden here in Zone 8B throughout the seasons so we can look back and see how things change from month to month and from year to year. So let's take a look at the garden and see what it produced in July. These tomatoes are my volunteer tomatoes that grew from one parent plant being a Tommy Toe tomato and then some random other tomatoes. I have a neighbor that has bees, and I get a lot of honeybees that visit my plants. And I believe that some of the plants were pollinated and produced seeds from a pineapple tomato that I grew, and then also some other cherries, and maybe other grape tomato varieties, and maybe even some Roma type varieties, and then produce seedlings. And this is what I have in my garden today. So I have 5 or 6 tomatoes that volunteered in my garden that one parent is known to be a Tommy Toe tomato. Cherry tomato, which is a large cherry tomato. And I'm really excited to see how these volunteers grow throughout the season. And now I'm going over to my cucumber plants, and these cucumbers, actually this is a Space Master bush cucumber. This is the first time I'm growing these, and they're supposed to be really compact. The vines are supposed to be short, like 2 to 3 feet long. But what I noticed is that they produce full-size cucumbers, and they're actually pretty large cucumbers if I let them grow to the full size, not over ripe or overly large, but just so they're like full. I noticed that they're pretty big. They're a lot bigger than my other type of cucumbers that I grow. For example, the Japanese type, or some of the smaller ones like a Monica or an Ashley cucumber. I think those are the right names. But this one, Space Master cucumber, I'll probably continue to grow it throughout the season. I'm going to put another set of cucumbers in. And these are the Monica cucumbers I have here on the right. On the left, that's not really on the screen right now, is my Japanese cucumbers called Tokyo Green. I'm just kind of cleaning up the cucumber bed right now, removing all of the older leaves and disposing of the leaves in my compost away from the cucumber plant to deter any cucumber beetles. And right now, the Monicas, they're pretty small, and the skin is really soft, so I don't expect them to last very long in my refrigerator. So I'll probably eat those first. And right now I'm just kind of cleaning up all of the vines. Some of these older leaves, as they start to drop off or get older, I like to cut them off and remove them from the garden. And now I'm going into my Sun Gold's cherry tomato, which is my favorite tomato this year. I don't know why, but they taste really good this year. They're very sweet. I would consider them just as sweet as a Sweet 100, if anyone has tried a Sweet 100, or if you've tried a Sun Gold and you are considering growing a Sweet 100. The Sun Gold cherry tomatoes are delicious, and what I like about them is that they don't split. So I've had like 1 or 2 split, which is nothing compared to all the tomatoes I've been harvesting from that single plant. And now I'm going in and I'm trying to see what tomato this is. I'm just cleaning up the leaves, just trimming off some of the bottom leaves that seem to be touching the ground, just doing some general maintenance on my tomato plants. One, it just helps them look nicer and not have all this extra dying or dry foliage. But then two, it also helps with the airflow around the tomato plants, and it helps them from when the leaves start sagging down that they don't touch the dirt, which can also give them some extra disease. And if you've seen some of my older videos, I have these tomato plants set up using the Florida Weave system to keep them off of the ground and give them extra support without doing too much. I just have 2 stakes on either side, and then I'm weaving twine or some kind of thicker rope in between, and that really supports the plants. And these are one of my earliest producers. It's a medium-sized tomato, and it grows a bunch of tomatoes. So here's a view of what they look like. These right here, also one of my favorite tomatoes, the Raspberry Liana. I grew these last year and I was really happy with them, and I'm growing them for the second time this year, and I think they will continue to be part of my vegetable garden every year because they just produce a lot of tomatoes, and the plant is generally pretty small. It doesn't, even though it keeps growing throughout the summer, it stays pretty compact and pretty small. But it does produce a lot of medium-sized, small tomatoes. They're larger than a cherry tomato, but not as large as a beefsteak. And they're really delicious. They don't have too much liquid on the inside, and they're not very dry, so they're like right in the middle. And I think these are now, let me see, these are Tommy-Toe tomatoes, which have been my staple for a long time because they're large cherry tomatoes that really taste like a juicy tomato. The only problem I have with these that I don't like is that they do split. So if you allow the cherry tomato to stay on the vine too long after it's ripe or starts ripening, they are very easy to just split. So what I like to do now is just harvest them a little bit earlier and be really careful on watering. And here we go with the Sweet 100, another favorite. I think pretty much every tomato is a favorite. If I grow a new tomato variety and it doesn't taste very good or it doesn't grow well or has a lot of disease, then it's just will be just not added to my garden next year. And pretty much everything I've grown this year I've been really happy with. The only issue is with that Tommy-Toe cherry tomato with the splitting. I just have to remember to not allow it to stay on the vine too long. And here we go. I am just measuring or weighing my first harvest of July to see how much it weighs. And I like to put my basket on the scale, clear it out so it's empty at 0, and then start adding the produce that I picked back in. So let's see how much this ends up being. 2 pounds and 7.3 ounces. Okay, the first one of July. Very exciting. I'm so glad I'm documenting this because in the past I really just documented it here and there, and I didn't really get a good idea of how much my garden produced. So with this new garden and having 3 beds, well 4 beds, and then eventually 6 beds, I just haven't finished the last 2, it'll be really interesting to see how much produce this space can produce. And right now I'm going back in and harvesting some more Space Master cucumbers. Seriously, this plant produces a lot of cucumbers. And then I still have a little bit of yellow wax beans. Most of them were in June, but I still have a little bit growing here in July. So I'm just grabbing a couple of those, or more than a couple, just grabbing some of those that are still growing. But you can even kind of see, I don't know if it's, I'm pretty sure they're bunny rabbits that are munching on the edges of the wax beans, unfortunately. They're getting bolder and creeping in on the garden instead of staying on the grass. So I grabbed some more cucumbers, and then this little spaghetti squash, grabbing the second one. I grew those from seed from a spaghetti squash that I was eating, and I just grew those. Those were in pots, and that's why I think they were a little bit small. But it's interesting to see that you can grow the seeds from a store-bought spaghetti squash in a 15 or 20-gallon pot. And now I'm just getting some Monica cucumbers, going back through and cleaning up the vine. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm just cleaning up the vine. I think I'm harvesting another one. So this plant hasn't produced as much as the Space Master, but I do like the cucumbers. They're smaller. They have smaller seeds and the skin is a little bit softer. The only problem with that is when you harvest them and you put them in the fridge, they don't last as long, maybe a week or maybe a week and a half before you start noticing that they're getting softer. Okay, here we are back indoors, and I'm going to weigh how much today's harvest is, putting the Monica cucumbers on there. I hope I didn't say Ashley. Sometimes I get those thrown mixed up, and these are Monica's. So there we go, 2 pounds, 1.6 ounces. Not bad. And good morning, everyone. I'm out here in the morning. I try to harvest everything in the morning while everything is plump and the weather isn't too hot because in July in coastal Virginia on zone 8B is pretty hot. Look at this cucumber, it's huge. Sometimes I miss these. I don't know how they're so good at hiding, but I'll go out there and find a cucumber that I wasn't expecting. Okay, so now we're back at the Monicas. That was the Space Master, and then now here at the Monicas and got another Monica. Usually in my zone, I have enough time to plant 2 sets of cucumbers because by the end of this month, the production is going to slow down and disease and the plant will get kind of crunchy and not produce as much. So I'll probably set another set of cucumbers at the end of the month or start putting some seeds down for them soon. And here we are at the Sun Gold. I've been giving a lot of these away because they're so delicious and I want people to try them that I keep forgetting to leave some for me. So I'm picking some of these for me and going through and seeing this one. This one's called a pink tiger tomato. It hasn't produced very much. I don't know if that's normal for it. This is the first time I've grown it. And actually, I don't know if I really like the flavor too much. The texture is really good. It's kind of crunchy, and it's very unique looking. So I kind of like growing it just for the color. And it's not bad tasting. It's just not as good as some of the other ones. So I'll probably continue growing it just to add some variety in the mix. And that is not a honeybee, but we have local bees just hanging out on the garden, which I really am glad that they decided to visit and pollinate my cucumbers today. And this little structure here is I just have them growing on tomato cages, which seems to be enough to support them. And I'm back over here at the Space Master just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Still have a lot of pollinators coming through, which is great. And I did miss one. Here we go. Another one. This one had a snail on it. Okay, now we're back inside. And I'm going to weigh my cucumbers. After I finish weighing everything, normally I'll wash it, like rinse it underneath the sink. Not anything with soap and water or anything, but just rinse it well and sometimes scrub it to make sure there's no dirt on it. And then I'll let it dry on a napkin. And that's what you see over to the left of the basket. So today's total's 2 pounds, 2.8 ounces. Not bad for July 6th. Okay, so going forward, I'm just going to kind of skip over the garden and just do the weigh-ins so we can total up how much I picked each day and then the totals for July. And man, this time I picked a lot of cucumbers. Some of them are kind of small and some were a little bit too large. And then I have a bunch of cherry tomatoes and I noticed that some of them are cracked. And it just depends on the severity of the crack if the tomato is still edible. If the crack has healed over, then that's pretty safe to eat. But if it's mushy or fleshy or anything's oozing out of it, then I would toss it. I wouldn't eat that. Maybe use it for saving seeds, maybe. Okay, so here's the total for July 11th, 3 pounds and 15.6 ounces. Not bad. Okay, the next day we have more cucumbers. I'm pretty much just harvesting cucumbers and tomatoes, cucumbers and tomatoes. It would be nice to have something else, maybe when I expand the garden a little more. I do have a couple other smaller crops, but I am getting some of the larger tomatoes in instead of just the cherries, which that's pretty fun. And some weird looking, that is the weirdest looking, that's Amazing Beauty. And that is the weirdest looking tomato there. And then the rest is just cherries. So I have, the raspberry lianas, different types of cherries, and then that's a Hungarian heart and a Amazing Beauty. So the total for July 16th is 4 pounds, 5.4 ounces, which makes the total so far 15 pounds, 7.6 ounces this month so far. Okay, so next we're going to the next weigh-in, which I think I have about the same kinds of things, cucumbers. And one thing just to note about these cucumbers, now that's a weird looking cucumber, it's like so flat and wide, is that you don't want to let your cucumbers get too large, although these are a little bit on the large size. You don't want them to get too large because then it kind of signals to the cucumber plant that it's time to stop producing. It doesn't need to produce anymore because it already has this cucumber that has seeds that are large enough to produce more cucumber plants the next season. So that's one reason you want to pick your cucumbers often. And as you saw, I got my first grape, Concord grape, that I harvested. And today, July 18th, is 3 pounds, 9.4 ounces. And now going to the next day, July 19th, I have a lot of San Marzanos that are becoming ripe. I notice if I leave them on there too long, they start cracking at the top or near the stem. So I try to harvest them as soon as they start turning red or a little bit after. And they're so lightweight. They're kind of empty, or there's a lot of air inside, which is interesting. They're probably really good for baking. This is for stuffing and then baking possibly. This is the first time I've grown this type of tomato, and I'm really excited to start cooking with it. Okay, for July 19th, I have 3 pounds and 12.2 ounces. And on to July 21st. I don't know if I'm going to keep this type of format. I think it might be fun to kind of break it up a little bit next time. So this time, these yellow ones are Amazing Beauty, and the first couple were really large, and now they're going down to kind of like a medium-sized tomato, but they're still producing really well. And the cherries have been producing really well throughout the whole season. The San Marzanos just started coming in mid to late July, which is interesting to see when everything ripens and how long everything takes. I think so far the cherries really have produced, if I were to count how much these produced, I think the cherries probably produce the most. Okay, so for today it's 4 pounds, 4.8 ounces. Okay, on to the next day. I'm going through and kind of speeding this up so it doesn't take too long, but man, all I got were cucumbers this time. They almost look like a zucchini, they're so large. 4 pounds, 12.2 ounces. I have to say, one of the most fun parts of having a garden is going out there with my basket and picking things. And if I get out early enough, it's not too hot or too humid. The only thing is mid-July is mosquito season all the way till September, October time period here on the Virginia coast. And now I'm just clearing this out, and this is my very last measure or weigh-in of the month. And this is a pineapple tomato. I believe it is a pineapple tomato because I grew a lot of them before, and I also grew tomatoes, and I know one of the parents are a tomato because it's in the same pot that I grew this plant in, and I believe the second parent is a pineapple tomato, and that's how I got that plant. My true pineapple tomato plants didn't produce anything yet, so I'm just still waiting. And I have to say, this is one of my biggest tomato, or the biggest tomato harvest that I've had this season so far, which is really exciting. And I have a lot of San Marzanos. Pretty much every tomato is in full production mode right now. And then I'll have to catch back up with you in August. But so far, this last one, July 27th, is 6 pounds, 4.1 ounces, for a total in July being 33 pounds, 6.1 ounces of just tomatoes and cucumbers, and a little bit of other things. Thanks for joining me today as I shared everything I harvested throughout the month of July. Now I'm starting to think about my late summer and fall garden, what needs to be cleaned up, what I want to keep growing, and what I can start planting next. Join me next month to see what the garden has in store for August. Until then, thanks for spending some time with me, and I'll see you next time.